Welcome to the With Pride and Grit podcast, a show dedicated to helping you navigate a season of transition in your life. I'm your host, Jen Pasquale, and as a 16-year military spouse, I know firsthand how challenging life's transitions can be. I also know it's an opportunity for growth, discovery, and new beginnings. In this season of With Pride and Grit, we're sharing stories of military spouses who are or have successfully transitioned to civilian life. We'll also hear from experts who can offer valuable insights about transition resources available to support a spouse's journey. Whether you're just starting the transition process or already well on your way, this podcast is for you. We hope to provide you with the knowledge and inspiration to make the most of this new chapter in your life. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. Today, I am excited to talk about careers and spouses. And for that, we're going to bring in a resident expert, which is Karen Francis from IVMF. And what I'm excited for you to hear a little bit about from Karen is all the programming that IVMF offers that can support you in your career, whether you are wanting to elevate your existing career or whether you're wanting to pivot into something completely different or have your first career. Any of those options, the work that Karen does can support that. So we will bring her in. And Karen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I love, me, soapbox is spouse employment. This is absolutely my pleasure.
Why don't you start, for those who don't know you, could you start with the Karen Francis story and what your history is as a military spouse yourself?
Sure. I've been a military spouse for, I'm not even going to say how long. My husband was active duty when we got married. Then he went Guard and Reserve, so I understand those issues as well. And then we went back to active duty when the op tempo got crazy and the Guard was constantly being deployed. So it was just made more sense to come back to active duty. I was lucky in that I had those years of a place as a National Guard spouse, so I had longer employment. But when we moved back to the DC area and my husband went back to active, I became more and more involved in advocacy for military spouses because this was the time when there was a lot shoved onto our plates and not any support or very little support. We had suicide numbers going through the roof. We had veteran unemployment. We had caregiver unemployment. It was all a mess. So I started thinking I wanted to do work as an advocate and in the military space because I'm a recovering paralegal, and I thought I was going to get an MSW, but I did a few years of caregiver support work and I was burning out. And I realized that employment is one of those issues that's not just about money. Okay, it's not just bringing in money. It's about your career aspirations. It's about you. In this country, you're never asked, what are you? You're asked, what do you do? And if a spouse can't say that they have a career path, that they have a job, a lot of times that has a severe detrimental effect on their mental health as well. Plus, in this day and age, you need two incomes to live even partly. Now I'm a veteran spouse because my husband retired. Seasoned. Remember we started calling ourselves seasoned? Yes, we did. It's better than old, whatever. And looking at the downrange effects of a spouse who hasn't had a career and not through their own choice. There are people who do not choose to work while their children are young. I completely respect that. But that's not them being forced. A military spouse is forced to not have a job because it's very hard to get a job when you're moving place to place and you've got a resume that looks like a doily. It's very pretty and it has holes, and it's hard to help people understand your resume, understand your job and career history. So these spouses, after their veteran becomes a veteran, after you retire or just get out, a lot of your prime earning years, the Social Security is less. Forget 401ks, you never got vested. You've got little dribs and drabs in various places. So I decided that I wanted to work with military spouses and employment
So you mentioned a bunch of things that I'd like to go back to because I think they
Okay.
were really important nuggets. One is something we see a lot in the Pride and Grit space, which is this identity challenge and the fact
Mhm.
that not for everyone, but for some folks who either have not been able to pursue their career, have never started their career, or have struggled to go back to or design one that really works for them, there can be this kind of identity
Mhm.
loss aspect that
Yeah.
happens as they follow their service member around the world. And that is absolutely a challenge. You also bring up the really important challenge of kind of the second and third order effects financially of
Mhm.
a later career start. And certainly
Mhm.
those are decisions families make all the time. But I think what's so wonderful about the resources that you are involved in is that it really can help spouses gain the tools that we need, gain the certifications that we need, and be able to really hit the ground running when we're ready to do that. So, what I'd love for you to go to is for folks who aren't familiar with IVMF. So, if someone is brand new, never heard of it, doesn't have any idea what it is, can you give us a sense of what the organization does and what your specific arm really focuses on?
Sure. IVMF, or the Daniello Institute for Veterans and Military Families, which is a mouthful. That's why we just call it IVMF. We've got four branches. Two of them are very specific. One is mine, that's O2O, and the other is entrepreneurship. And I know you're going to talk to my friend Anna about that one. What Onward to Opportunity, or O2O, does is we provide free career training, free certification training, and we will pay for one certification exam. And we do that for transitioning service members, veterans, Guard and Reserve, and spouses. Now, we are what's called a skill bridge program. So for the transitioning service member, they got to wait until they're within that 180 days, unless they're in the Navy, and that's a whole different mess. But spouses, I have a spouse who just started with us. Her service member is getting out of AIT. So she's at the very beginning of her journey as a military spouse.
That's
And
incredible.
and she can use our program. Spouses can
Mhm.
use our program at any time, and that includes the entrepreneurship and the certification program. And what certifications do for a spouse is give them a focus. It also gives them credibility, because if you look at an awful lot of job descriptions, they say mandatory or highly recommended this certification, whether it's Security Plus, if you're going into securities, cybersecurity, super secret purple squirrel land, you got to have it. If you are, we'll use that term again, seasoned spouse, and you've been doing all of the volunteer work that you and I know goes with being a seasoned spouse, how many mandatory fun days and holiday party and promotion ceremonies have you organized? How much in the bad old days of high op tempo, how much
Mhm.
FRG work did you do? You could be a project manager. It doesn't have to be that it was done for money. It just had to follow what PMI sets out to have as a PMP. So if you're a military spouse and you want to take that doily resume and package it a little bit differently and give yourself credibility from the second that recruiter puts their 6 seconds worth of eyes on your resume, PMP or PHR if you're in human resources, put that behind your name, your credibility's gone up. And that's
So
what we offer.
that's super helpful because I think, everybody doesn't necessarily understand what O2O does. So I appreciate you walking us through that. And I love the idea that someone has started at the very beginning with setting themselves on a course by being able to leverage the services. If
Exactly.
you paint a picture of the average folk coming in that's military spouse, in our audience, primarily it is a retiring service member, so a career spouse. Can you give us a scenario of where they came in, what they did, and what that meant for the career they were able to then establish with that certification?
I've had a couple. I've got one, like I said, she just started, but she's been doing IT and tech for a long time. So she's getting one of the higher ranking level three. Yeah, level threes. She's getting a CISP. That's a beast. The PMPers that I'm seeing coming in are a lot of spouses who are senior, who've been in for a while, who've done various jobs, who've done a lot of the volunteer work, a lot of the command support work, and they may not have had an actual, what you and I would call a linear career, where you build like normal people. We don't do that. We don't do that as military spouses, do we? Unless you're lucky and you got a GS job that moved with you, and those are like hen's teeth. So if you are what you and I think of as a spouse leaving after 15, 20 years as a military spouse with lots and lots of different bits and bobs to package together, they have then gone on and gotten either a PMP, which is very highly valued, especially in this area, or if they're tech-minded, they've maybe started their tech career with us, Security Plus or something like that, or they've gone into AWS Cloud, or like this young spouse has been doing tech for a while, needed that next step up, and came in and got a CISP. But for the seasoned spouses, the ones I see mostly are doing PMP because they know that is going to move them up that ladder, or at least give them a really good foothold, because they may not have to explain those holes in the resume because they're proving their worth. Because people know that with a PMP, you have to prove a certain amount of months doing projects. So if PMI accepted you, that recruiter knows that PMP behind the name states that they've got this much experience already. They don't have to look much further down the resume because it's already there. If they go in and get a PHR, which is human resources professional, they've probably been doing some of it periodically here and there. It's proving, without having to dig through that resume, that they've got that credibility, that level of knowledge.
And you and I both know that for spouses who are either pivoting into a career field or starting a career as their service member winds one down, that whole filled resume is often just a point of real frustration and almost discouragement sometimes. I'm sure, like you have talked to spouses who
Yes.
feel like, who's going to hire me? Look at what this looks like. And so it's really hard to just be willing to put yourself out there if you feel like your resume doesn't present you in a way that's going to make you feel competitive to folks who've been doing some of that work. And so for those who don't know, the PMP is
project management professional.
Thank you. I was like, why am I blanking? Project management professional from the Project Management Institute, correct?
Correct.
And so if someone was interested in pursuing, is it that they come to you and you have a conversation about what they're interested in and what the options are? Or do folks come to you not really knowing what or do they really come to you when they're like, yep, this is exactly what I want?
Both. I have spouses come in who say, yep, I want this. Okay, great. If you know that you qualify, you have to make sure that you qualify, that you have the prerequisites that are required by that certifying body. We're not the certifying body. We just provide the training. We pay for the exam. We're not the certifying body. So we cannot say, yes, you qualify. If PMI says you don't, then you don't. CISP, if that certifying agency says, you don't have the right amount of years of experience, sorry, we can't. I'm not going to fight them. We can't. And I have people come in and say, I can do anything. Yeah, I know.
For better or worse.
You can do anything. However, say that to a recruiter and you can see that the gates just close in front of you because they don't want to hear that. They have boxes they need to put you in. And if you say that I can do anything, they got 45 boxes. They don't have time to figure out which box to put you in. That's your job. Your job as a job seeker is to figure out the box that you fit into. So I will usually sit on a call with them and say, look, you need to figure out, number one, what you're good at, and number two, if you like it, and what you enjoyed about all your past jobs. And the easiest way to do that is make a list of all your past jobs. Now, for spouses, this could be a very long list. And you look at it and go, did I really do? Yes, you did. But Within that list, you put down all the stuff that you did within those jobs, and then you highlight what you loved. You highlight what made you enjoy your job.
I'm curious if you also find, and this has just been my observation and PHP is or PMP is the one that comes to mind for this, is do you find that sometimes spouses can be, I guess, influenced by the space, right? There's a lot of folks that are doing that certification. It
Mhm.
seems like one that would help you, but how do
Flavor
you
of the
really
month.
help? Say again.
Flavor of the month.
Kind of. And it's a lot of work. And it's this really valuable one certification that O2O can help with. So what would be your advice to a spouse who's, has a friend in their ear who loved it and did it and thinks it's the best thing ever? Or they're talking to recruiters and they're saying, well, if you only had PMP, then this would make all the difference in the world. What's the advice you give them about how to really figure out whether it's right for them? It's a great
Mm,
certification. No one's going to debate
yeah.
that. But how do people know if any one certification is right for them?
The certification has to fit the career path, okay, that you want to get into. So rather than talk to me or any other career coach, talk to someone who's doing the job. Do an informational interview where you're interviewing them. Find someone, you can find them on LinkedIn constantly.
Yeah.
So, spouses, get on LinkedIn, please, and then reach out. Find someone who has the job you think you want, the career you're sort of looking at. If they have a military background, even better, because then they are willing to sit and talk to you because our community does that. Eh, Other communities may not, but if you found especially if you find a military spouse who's in that kind of job and you want to ask them questions about what's the day in the life of your kind of work like? And if you hear a lot of stuff that makes you go, awesome, okay. If you start hearing stuff and you're sitting there thinking, if I had to do that all day, every day, I would lose what's left of my mind. The career you want can't be just to make money. Now, we all need to make money. We all have mortgages and kids in college or whatever. But if you're at a point where you can start making the choice of what you want to do and start working towards that, find the certification that fits it. If you love working with people, if you want to work with people in a human resources department, maybe you get a PHR or an SPHR if you've got a lot of experience. Is it the AWS cloud because you want to do cloud? Is it tech because a couple of my friends who are out at Amazon now and they love it and they've gone through the apprenticeship program. They're now they're no longer apprentices, they're actually there. This is what they loved and they got certifications. I think one or two of them got their first one with us because you can only use us once and then
Mhm.
built on it. But you got to figure out your focus. Until you do, getting a certification may not help. If you're looking at maybe PMP or maybe PHR, go to that wonderful resource, the University of YouTube, and take a look at what you can find for free there that will give you a flavor. I had someone tell me, this sounds about as exciting as watching paint dry, then don't do that. Just don't do that.
I love that framing because what I hear is there's no necessarily right or wrong. There's just a lot of different tracks you could take. And you can come in with a certification in mind and you're able to help support someone to connect with what they need for that certification. But you can also come with an industry in mind and do the industry work to figure out what's a good fit for you. And
Exactly.
then see, okay, is there a way to elevate my competitiveness in this industry by way of a
Mhm.
certification that O2O could offer? Because
Exactly.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but it is not that every certification out there is under sort of O2O's umbrella. There's a handful of categories and areas that you focus on for your certifications, correct?
I usually tell people go to the website and take a look at our list. And our list will also have links. So there's a link next to CISP that will take you to the website for the certifying agency. You can get a lot more information on that actual certification there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And we'll make sure we put that in the show notes so it's easy to
Sure.
find. In terms of access, you mentioned all the folks who have access to it, including military spouses, which of course we appreciate. What's the sort of what happens after service? So is it also veteran spouses are
Yes.
eligible for a period or for any period or?
All periods. We are, I think, one of the very few that actually it doesn't end. And if you are the divorced spouse, if you can get your ex to give you a copy of their DD 214, you can join us.
I want to go back to something you just said, because I think that was a really important point, and I want to make sure we did not see it, which is this idea that remembering that these certifications exist and remembering that it doesn't mean you have to do it now. And so like your example of promotion, I think is such a great one, where if you think you can get your foot in the door and get into the field that you want to be in, then maybe do that for a minute. And one, make sure it's where you want to be, make sure you like the work, because you could have interviewed a dozen people, but for you, that work could land differently. So there could be some merit to just considering some patience in the process, that if you give yourself the time to make sure it's what you really want, then you can always come back and do the certification as a way to just, make you competitive within the organization as opposed to competitive to the organization. It's going to be different for everybody, but I think that's just a really interesting point that I would not have considered. That sometimes being patient may actually let you leverage that in a way that it's really impactful and you may not have considered it.
Yeah, the best use of the one chance, because we only get one shot with us. So let's say you decide you want to do IT. So maybe you take A+. Now, A+ is the basic, and the exam's not that expensive. And you can find quite a few groups that'll help you get that. So you do the training, you get your A+, you get your foot in the door. You'll probably end up on help desk because that's where most IT starts. And you realize that this is really what you want to do, but you're not quite sure which direction you want to go. CompTIA has this wonderful, they call it the certification roadmap, and it shows if you want to get to this endpoint, say cybersecurity, these are the ones that you have to take. If you want to get into network, it's a different set, okay? It's not always the same. So maybe you stay in a company for a little while, you stay in tech for a little while and say, yeah, I like this. I don't like that. I don't want to do hardware. I don't want to write code. I want to do this part. That's when you might come to us and say, okay, what do you have that will get me that next step? And we'll take a look, and again, if you go to the website and you take a look at the various IT or any of the other certifications, there is that link that will take you to that website of the certifying body where you can really dig, because we just don't have the space on our website, I don't think. How many pages can you open? Go to that web and do your own searching for what it is in that certification that's going to get you where you want to be, because that's what certifications are for. They're to get you a career. It's not general knowledge education, which, I mean, I'm always in favor of learning for learning's sake, but certifications are to get you that career hold. You can get out of O2O what we're either going to know someone that's going to be able to help. I'm a certified career coach. Not all of the installation program managers are, but all of us have got enough experience in the field that we can work with you to help you narrow down your choices. Now, if you need a lot of career work, we will probably refer you to others who have that specialty, and quite honestly, who would have the time to sit down and spend 30 hours with you. I love doing that part personally. I love helping people figure out where they want to be, but there's an awful lot that any job seeker needs to do on their own. We cannot make the decisions for you. So you have to be able to take your resume and your experience and look at that job posting and check off what you can do. And if you can do 85% of it, apply. If you can only do 2 things on a list of 40, don't waste your time and your mental energy on applying for a job that you're never going to get. The reality is, especially now, that there's a checklist out there, whether it's an ATS or it's a human looking at it and going, doesn't have what we need. At IVMF, we try to give you access to the people that can help you with starting that new career, whether it's in the installation, it's called OTYC, Onward to Your Career. It's 3-4 days of launch, we call it. And we do a lot of connecting. I do mine virtually, not just because of COVID, but because of the Beltway. I'm here in DC. Who wants to get on the Beltway? And I have recruiters come in to talk. I have directors of military hiring come in to talk, to say, this is what this job would entail. This is how you would be able to best situate yourself. I think the role of a lot of us at IVMF is making those connections to companies, because the companies like us, they know what our people have. They know that the people who come in to get these certifications are the driven ones, the ones who want to improve, and the ones who want to get another career started.
What I hear in what you're saying is that O2O is there to walk beside you and help facilitate the things that you're needing, but you still have to own your journey. You still have to own the effort.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So I think
I can't.
but I think it's important for folks to realize that if you're not in a season where you can really put the time and effort in, don't burn your one chance in a season where you don't really have the ability to make it at least some level of priority yourself. And that's okay. We all have those seasons where it's just not possible. And so being patient and waiting for the time when you can is something worth considering, perhaps.
When you start your coursework, you've started your coursework, that's it, your one chance. And that is something that all of us, all of the installation coordinators, will talk one-on-one with our folks about, and just say, look, make sure this is your optimal time. Don't do it if you're PCSing. That's not a good time to do it.
No, that's good advice. Speaking of the installation managers you mentioned, can you walk us through the process? So someone wants to connect with O2O, they want to have a conversation. What does that process look like for someone?
Okay, you go to our website. You'll see a tab that says programs. Hover over that. It'll say either entrepreneurship or career. Click on career. It'll say getting started. There is a 10-question interest form. On the interest form, it will say, are you within 50 miles of an installation? And it gives you a list. There's about 18 of them. Pick the one you're closest to. You'll usually get an email. I do an automatic. Mine is automatic. It gives you here's your eligibility criteria, and then there's an orientation. A lot of the questions you're going to have are going to get answered in there about how to get started, what we've got, how it works, how the program actually works, the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty. And I usually ask people to do that first. Now, you can also simply hit reply to that email and say, I'd like to have some time to talk with you. At least that you can do that with my program and with quite a few of the others, because that's what we're here for. We're here to listen and to help you ask the right questions.
It's such a great perspective that it is not just, okay, this person, this certification, go. It really is a dialogue, and it really should be a dialogue, because particularly I think with this audience, with the military spouse audience, who is often in this pivot of potential for what's next after service. And so there's a lot of questions to ask and answer. So I appreciate the kind of the way that you approach it in this very deliberate way to ensure that we can find the resources that we really need.
This audience is an audience that's usually got their ducks at least partially in a row. They know that a career is what they need. It's not just what can I get for now, but really considering what they want to do. A lot of folks, when they get out, when their service member transitions out, and you lose a lot of the supports that you had as an active spouse, your community, I would strongly advise people to make sure that they keep hold of that community that they had. It's easier now with Facebook, right?
Sure.
And with things like that, but make sure you're keeping that community connection, because we as a community understand what the other person's gone through. When you get out into civilian world, you're going to find they don't. They have no idea what you've done. They don't understand. And it's just easier to be able to talk to someone and ask a question without having to re-explain your language. And what we try to do with O2O is make sure that what you're doing and what you want to do, it will fit with that future plan. The installation coordinators and program managers are here to make sure that you're going to succeed.
I'm always interested to hear what you guys have, what O2O is doing, and the profiles or the stories of the people that you all are helping. So thank you for the work you do and for spending some time with us to tell us all about it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the With Pride and Grit podcast. We're so grateful to our guests for sharing their stories and expertise with us, and we're grateful to you, our listeners, for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And we always appreciate you sharing us with a friend or leaving a kind review. If you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can find us on social media under @PrideandGrit or on our website, prideandgrit.com. Until next time, please remember you're not alone on this journey, and it is our privilege to walk alongside you.